If you're in the mood for Christmas movies this holiday season, be sure to check out Eyes Wide Shut, which is my favorite Christmas movie, aka Christmas with the Illuminati. Catch it right after Charlie Brown and Rudolph. There are endless amounts of videos dissecting Stanley Kubrick's final movie, Eyes Wide Shut. But did you know there was an earlier version of this movie? That's right, like The Shining, Kubrick adapted a story into a movie, and he wasn't the first to do it. There was an earlier version of the novella Dream Story, or Traumnovelle, made in Austria in 1969 as a TV movie. In this video, I want to show you some of that version you've likely never seen and highlight some differences with Kubrick's version. Unlike The Shining, I haven't read the book, so you may want to correct me on anything I get wrong. So this is just a review of the movie versions and how they differ. I'll tell you what I think is good about the different versions, and if you're a Stanley Kubrick fan, you might find some insight in his movie-making decisions by what he chose to add or omit. First off, the title and character names differ. While the '69 version is named directly based on the book, Kubrick chose Eyes Wide Shut, which could mean a refusal to see something that is in plain view. Dr. Harford is actually Dr. Fridolin, Harford being a more anglicized name than Fridolin. The piano player Nightingale was actually Nachtigall, the German word for the bird nightingale. This character could have been named because a nightingale bird sings and thus makes its music into the night, as does the piano player. So that was sort of the same name, just Americanized. And the doctor doesn't bump into the piano player at the Ziegler party because in the old version there is no Ziegler. Instead, Dr. Friedland happens upon Nachtigall at a bar and learns of the secret masquerade ball from the drunken pianist spilling the beans, though the ball is actually foreshadowed by a newspaper article about a different ball. In fact, foreshadowing and symbolism seems to play a big part of the story, perhaps more so than Eyes Wide Shut. For instance, the doctor offering to give himself up for his crimes and forming a crucifixion with his arms, and later on his wife's dream involves his own crucifixion again. Even the costumes are an ironic kind of symbolism. He dresses as a monk, the women look like nuns, so they are pretending to be pious while they are about to sin. The choice of costumes in Eyes Wide Shut, however, don't appear to have any symbolism, not that I know of, except they are, of course, very creepy. Admittedly, the face masks in Traumnovelle are pretty cheesy by today's standards. In fact, they kind of remind me of Robin from the 1960s Batman. The visits to both the prostitute and the woman whose father passed away are similar, though Dr. Fridolin in Traumnovelle, when consoling the woman, obviously makes quite a sexual gesture, and the woman knows it too. The Tom Cruise throughout Eyes Wide Shut makes no such gesture. In fact, he doesn't seem very sexual at all.
What do you want to do?
Well, what do you recommend?
Despite his yearning to join a sex party. The password for admittance is not Fidelio, but Denmark, which actually has a significance because his wife was fantasizing about some Danish sailors nearby a vacation they took. So by pure coincidence, while the doctor tries to turn his own infidelity fantasies into reality, the word he must utter to get into the party is Denmark.
Parole. Denmark.
Which should have reminded him of his own wife's potential infidelity. The password Fidelio means faithful in Latin, so Kubrick chose to symbolize the fidelity or ironic lack of it that way.
May I have the password, please?
Fidelio.
Though it's a little more accessible to the audience in Traumnovelle. In fact, more is accessible to the audience in Traumnovelle due to the doctor's inner monologue, which is lacking in Eyes Wide Shut. This reminder, the password being Denmark, is one of several warning signs that the doctor should have paid attention. This is important because we can't view the doctor as a sympathetic character. He should have never gone to this party. He was warned not to go, goes anyway, and gets a woman killed. Before the doctor gets to the ball, he must get a mask and a cloak. He visits a costume seller. One difference is the costume seller is not reluctant at all to rent a costume in Traumnovelle, whereas in Eyes Wide Shut, he must be paid $200 over the cost of the rental. In both movies, the seller is awakened at a late hour, but in Traumnovelle, the assistant seems almost happy to have a customer. In both cases, the costume selection is interrupted by two men fooling around with the costume seller's daughter. In both movies, she speaks a line about how the doctor should wear an ermine cloak. but in Eyes Wide Shut it's practically inaudible. I always found this line interesting because royalty wears ermine like the kings and queens in medieval times. The doctor wants to frolic with royalty. Even though he is clearly well off financially, he wants to be higher in status or at least experience it for a night. The chasm of difference between an upper middle class or lower upper class, however you want to put it, man, such as Dr. Friedland or Dr. Harford, and the ultra-rich is even more illustrated in Eyes Wide Shut, with the Ziegler character whose wealth and status Dr. Harford doesn't even come close to, and who he himself is nowhere near as wealthy and powerful as the people at the masked ball, which in Eyes Wide Shut is filmed in an actual Rothschild's mansion. The names of the people at the ball aren't mentioned, but I've always thought the people at the ball and the man under the red cloak, remember, Rothschild means red shield, would either be a Rothschild or whoever they look up to. Names we may not have even heard of, names from the ancient aristocracy which Dr. Friedland wonders about, who ruled the world centuries ago and may still, but in the shadows, undercloaked, and behind masks. This is a world that is several worlds away from the main character. Even Ziegler, with all his wealth and connections, was frightened of them. It was Ziegler, though, who had Hartford followed in the scariest scene in Eyes Wide Shut, which is actually lacking in Traumnovelle. If Ziegler can send this kind of message, imagine what the people at the masquerade party can do. Back to the costume seller though. In Traumnovelle, the costume seller / father almost instantly forgives his daughter and even defends her when asked about it by the doctor. In Eyes Wide Shut, the man acts in rage and locks the men in a room. I posit in both cases it was all part of an act. Being found, locked in a room, from the outside with 2 locks. Seriously, what kind of room has locks like that? And a window peering in. This was all part of their thrill. Even calling the young lady a child is probably part of the act. These guys paid to be found, paid to be locked up, and they do it all the time. And a similar situation happens in Traumnovelle. In both movies, the costume seller says that the doctor can return for something else which needn't be a costume. This whole scene is like a taste of the shenanigans the doctor wants to get in on, but at the same time is repulsed by it. Why didn't he see this as a warning sign? He couldn't follow through with the prostitute, he didn't like what he saw at the costume seller, and yet he persisted in his pursuit of the sexual shenanigans at the masked ball. In both movies, the doctor is given a note about ending his search for answers. The answers the doctor sought were what happened to the woman at the ball who redeemed the doctor and who ends up dead. In both movies, she ends up dead, but in Traumnovelle, it's more insinuated that the men would assault her, whereas in Eyes Wide Shut, it's not shown what happens. In Traumnovelle, the doctor actually fights for her, shows his courage, which he lacked earlier when the men bumped into him, which may have led to the whole adventure, his insecurity and questioning of his own bravery. In Eyes Wide Shut, the doctor is much more timid, much more afraid. Just look at him after he tells his wife everything. He looks like a schoolboy in detention. I feel more bad about the Tom Cruise doctor because I feel like his wife was absolutely terrible to him, which is not as much shown in Traumnovelle. When the Tom Cruise doctor is interrupted at the prostitute by his wife, I was more sad that the doctor didn't have someone to talk to, even if it was fake, even if it was paid for, just to give him some feeling of companionship which he lacked. That's what I think he needed truly most. The wife in Eyes Wide Shut seems much more likely to be in on the whole shenanigans in some way, perhaps having been at a different ball at a different night. Look at the wicked glare she gives the doctor. Both wives, however, scoff at the thought of being together with the doctor forever and say, don't think too far into the future. Whereas the Nicole Kidman wife seems to be physically ill at the thought of staying with Tom Cruise. After the night, the doctor tries to find Nightingale, and the hotel clerks informs him that he is checked out. I have to say the Eyes Wide Shut Nightingale is more innocent because he never wanted to give away the password and warned more against going. Whereas in Traumnovelle, the pianist simply tells his old friend and says, okay, come along. Only in Eyes Wide Shut is the clerk acting ridiculously over the top flirty with the doctor, who seems oblivious at any rate. In both movies, the warning sign of the mask is found on the pillow, and in both movies, the wife is mysteriously unaware. Did someone creep in and place it on the pillow while she was sleeping? What if she rolled over and knocked it down? Or if she found it first? She must have been aware of the placement of the mask on the pillow. And finally, only in Eyes Wide Shut does the wife suggest sex as the immediate resolution, and only in Eyes Wide Shut are two old men seen at the Ziegler party seen strangely talking to the unattended to daughter of the doctor and his wife. So it seems similar to The Shining, Stanley Kubrick altered the source material to make what he wanted to make. The earlier adaptation, Traumnovelle, seemed to stick quite close to the source material, and it is a great story, well acted, but with a different kind of mood. Kubrick's movie is closer to a thriller movie than a drama about an adventuring man on the verge of unfaithfulness to his wife. While both movies hint about this unseen layer of society, higher than our elected representatives, who play around as if they are aristocrats who pull the strings of our elected officials, who have the power to disappear people, plant fake stories in the press, and cover up their crimes. When Dr. Harford is warned not to inquire further, it sends chills down the spine because you truly feel they have the power to do what they warn, to cause dire consequences on the doctor and his family. Eyes Wide Shut hints more about the involvement of underage people in this layer of society, with the men taking away the daughter at the very last shot of the movie, with the costume seller shenanigans being somewhere between the prostitute visit and the masked ball at the mansion. Whether or not the young lady was actually a child, the hint is there, though I think it was just all a game. Or is it all a game? What kind of game ends with someone dead? Is all of this going on all around us, including the warning signs? And are we all going around with our eyes wide shut? I like Traumnovelle, and if you like Eyes Wide Shut or read the book, you may like it as well. As far as being faithful to the book, you hear the doctor's inner monologue throughout, something that would of course be included in the story and is missing in the Kubrick version, which has a lot of staring and music instead. You could of course enjoy Eyes Wide Shut for all the weird things Kubrick added or subtracted. Kubrick is known to change things, to differ from the source material, and why shouldn't he? He was making his own thing, so of course he would change whatever he felt needed to be changed to tell his own version of it. There are many people who believe the books are superior no matter what, but to that I say they are different media, different end products, and different experiences. I haven't read the novel Dream Story, but both movies based on it are good in different ways, and both highly recommended viewing. As for the 20 or so minutes of the movie rumored to have been mysteriously cut from Eyes Wide Shut after Kubrick's death right before the film's release, which I'm sure some of you are hoping to see when you clicked on this video, I have inquired the movie studio some time ago to what the scenes were and what kind of secrets were held back from the final cut of Eyes Wide Shut, and I received this in my mailbox. Some questions are better left unanswered.
Go.